Thank you for coming. Um, I'm assuming a lot of you are here because of the article. I'm really glad that blew up the way it did. I'm really glad you're all here, like supporting the trans community and stuff. Um, I made this presentation because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, trans rights are not great right now. Ever since 2020, it's just been getting like progressively worse and worse, you know. And I've wanted to do something about it for a while, but this Women's Studies project kind of gave me the opportunity to do that. And also, I noticed when talking to a lot of cis friends, they just don't know like anything about what's happening. Like they don't know any bills, they don't know. I mean, they don't know anything. So so that's like I guess the main reason for this is just like to teach cis and trans students like how the state of things are right now, and what we can do about it, like organizations we can help, ways to protest, stuff like that. So, yeah, basically what I just said. Like, I'll start out just by like overviewing like the state of trans rights, like in Ohio and in the U.S. in particular. I'll go over like certain bills that are passed and have yet to be passed. I'll talk about like where this kind of stems from, like the rhetoric behind it, like how it's gotten so much worse in the past few years. I'll briefly talk about like the effects it has on people, like the mental effects, the way it affects cis women too. And the fourth section will be about different organizations and resources around here that if you're a trans person, you can go to for help, or if you're a cis person, you can donate to, you can volunteer for, just things to kind of help the community. And 5, I want to discuss to any students here who might want to protest, like how to do that, what my experiences are, what Sai's experiences are. Yeah, and then after that, it can just be a Q&A. I want people to like, I want any trans people who want to like share their experiences to come up here. I want anyone who has any questions to ask them, answer them to the best of my abilities. But yeah. This is a graph from the Trans Legislation Tracker. It was from yesterday. I don't know if it's changed at all, but as you can see, these describe all of the anti-trans bills. Yeah, all of the anti-trans bills. Already a lot in 2021, but you can see it's just going progressively more and more intense. And this year, it's definitely the most intense. We're not even halfway through, and it's already surpassed the entirety of 2024. And so, and also this is like kind of showing like what each bill would be about. So the pink would be the bathroom bills, like banning trans people from using the bathroom of their choice. The orange would be sports bills, like banning mostly trans women from participating in sports, which we'll get into that. Healthcare, mostly banning trans healthcare for minors, but also there have been some pushes to, you know, ban it for adults, for people under 19, stuff like that. Education, that goes for like the Don't Say Gay bills, like SB1, if you guys know about that, I'll talk about it later. But like those kind of things that affect like higher ed and public schools and whatever. And then other, that will include just like miscellaneous things like there's like performance bills where like trans people in the bills like aren't allowed to perform in public because it might be indecent. There's bills where, you know, they ban trans people from the military, stuff like that. There are 5 bills currently in effect that are like anti-trans in Ohio. HB 68 was the earliest one. It was, these dates are like when they weren't when they were signed, but they were when they took effect. So HB 68 took effect in April 2024. It's called the Enact Ohio Saving Adolescents from Experimentation Act, or the SAFE Act. Basically, it's just a gender-affirming hair ban for minors. It was really, this was like the first time like when I had been out that like I remember witnessing like one of these like massive anti-trans bills, and it was very scary. Thankfully, at the last moment, they put in this clause where like I could be grandfathered in because I'd already been on hormones, but a lot of people were not that lucky. I also want to point out the after the ACLU stepped in, the 10th District Court of Appeals ordered a permanent injunction in March 2025, which is a huge success. But the state like appealed to that, and so the Ohio Supreme Court allowed like a permanent like stay, or not permanent, but like a stay for like as long as the appeals process will go on. So even though the 10th District Court said it isn't like constitutional, as long as this appeals process goes on, minors will still not be able to get HRT. The next one, which I didn't hear about, was HB 214. Basically, from what I can tell, just a don't say gay bill in public schools. It was framed as like religious freedom or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it's just like don't say gay. SB 104, that was signed in late 2024. It took place, or like, went into effect in early 2025. It's a bathroom ban for trans students, including college students. So for the past few months, when I've gone to school, I am not allowed to use the bathroom, technically. I mean, I need to use the man's bathroom, or I need to like go down to the nurse and ask very politely if I can use her bathroom. But it's very embarrassing, you know. And not to mention dangerous for any trans people. Like if I presented feminine, like it would be dangerous for me to go into the men's bathroom. If like a trans man was presenting masculine, like especially one who had been like transitioned, like maybe have a beard, like that would make the women in the women's spaces feel unsafe, much more than like a trans woman being in there. HB 8 was the Parents' Bill of Rights, which basically just restated like don't say gay, whatever. You can't talk about that in public schools. And it also forcibly outs trans students. So if, for example, there's like a trans guy who isn't out to their parents, but with their teachers and with faculty, they're like out and they're being supported. This bill would make it so that technically the teacher would have to inform the parents of this, and that can lead to a lot of, dangerous living situations. SB 1 is probably the biggest one in here. I didn't actually know it wasn't in effect yet. It'll go into effect June 2025. But as you probably heard, it bans DEI in higher education. It restricts the freedom of teaching for teachers. Like, there's a lot more censorship there, and it reduces bargaining rights for teachers. And this isn't just for trans issues, obviously, but it does like go into that. Of course, it's also a huge detriment for any people of color. And here are some bills in progress. HB 172 prohibits mental health services to minors without parental consent, which basically just attacks gender-affirming mental health care for minors. Again, if a trans kid wanted that, they would have to get permission from their parents, and their parents might not be supportive of that, and that would just lead to their mental health deteriorating. There's something interesting I noticed. There were two bills. There's HB 155 and SB 113, and they were listed at different times, but they were the exact same bill. Like I looked through them, they were like the exact same. I don't know, but there's like a representative in here, right? Hi. Do you know why they do that?
What's that?
Do you know why like they might like make like two separate bills that say the exact same thing?
Are you talking about HB 155 and SB 113?
Yeah. Have you seen that?
So this is Social Studies 101. When a bill becomes law, there are two tracks. You have the Senate bill, and then you have a House bill. So one of them, they're exactly the same language. However, if they don't pass both the House and the Senate, they don't become law. So if say SB 113 passes the Senate, it now has to come down to the House and get voted. And then the House bill has to go to the Senate and get voted. So they're essentially trying to I shouldn't say game the system, but they're trying to make sure that one way or another, one of those two makes it through to the finish line. On my legislative aide may know, but there may be some slight differences in the two. So,
yeah, I mean, you look rude for me. You didn't notice it.
No.
They're probably identical.
Yeah.
They seem.
Yeah. It's more about, a lot of these bills have come through multiple times. For example, the sports one and the one you were talking about, experimentation one, those first started appearing in the legislative body back in like 2018. And every 2 years somebody would reintroduce them, change the language a little bit, till finally that critical mass was obtained where they were able to get the bill passed. So I think oftentimes these bills get introduced knowing that nothing will happen with them reintroducing them in to 2 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like assumed, but I didn't want to just like spread this information. So thank you for that. Next up, the HB 190. This one is particularly stupid. It
Like all of them aren't.
Well, yeah. It's called the Given Name Act. It basically just restricts the use of gender-affirming name and pronouns for students and staff. But it's like you have like you can be called the proper name, but your parents have to like hand in a note saying that you are actually trans and supported, and then like that you can be called that name. Which like obviously like the way it's worded, it seems like it will also hurt like any cis students who just go by a different name. But like obviously it's not going to be used to enforce that. It's just stupid. Yeah.
Man, I can't believe nicknames are illegal now.
Yeah. And also under this bill, like if like a teacher like consistently like dead named you, misgendered you, there was no like reprise for that. Like there wouldn't be any consequences for them. HB 249 is the performance bill I was talking about earlier, one of them. It's called the Indecent Exposure Modernization Act. It bans drag queens and trans people from performing in public where there could be children. This is, I believe, an amendment of a previous bill that banned like, you know, any like sexual dances in public, which makes sense. But this bill would include, like, because it would be like, you know, strippers, go-go dancers, men who dress as women. Like, it's very strange. HB 196 regards candidate nomination protest names on candidacy forms. It would just forcibly out any trans like people running for any position in government. It would forcibly dead name them, all that. And HB 96 is one of the worst ones that are happening right now. It's all from Trans Ohio. It's a proposed budget, and I believe there was a hearing for it yesterday, or like public comments were allowed. But it stops funding youth homeless shelters that help LGBTQ youth and LGBTQ plus youth and families. It redefines gender as only 2 sexes. It requires that all materials in libraries with any LGBTQ plus content be made inaccessible to minors. It bans pride flags at government buildings. It restricts Medicaid funding for most gender-affirming care. And it bans public buildings from placing menstrual products in men's restrooms. So just like, it's basically just like a full-on attack on a lot of like trans rights and conveniences. And it also does a lot of other bad stuff, like it cuts school and library funding, it reduces water safety standards and tax collective bargaining. So on the sheet that I handed out to most of you, or not me, but people handed out to most of you, Sai very graciously wrote a template for like contacting reps. This one's about HB 196 and not HB 96, but if you have the time, please like send an email based on that to your reps for HB 96 because it's a really scary bill, like going into it. There's a lot of bad things in it. I also want to talk about like
in the corner. There's a bunch of seats up front.
Oh,
so please,
yeah.
Please come. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I also wanted to go over like any national efforts to suppress trans people. So mostly just the executive orders made by Donald Trump, like right at the beginning of his presidency. There's a bunch of those. I just listed out a bunch, like only acknowledging 2 unchanging genders, male and female, banning gender-affirming care for people under 19. I want to get into that in like a later section. Ending DEI in government, stopping K-12 schools from discussing LGBTQ plus topics, removing funding and research from queer healthcare. So these aren't like laws, and I know a lot of states and a lot of places aren't complying with them. Like, I mean, I'm still getting my HRT from Costco, but like you know, it's been hurting a lot of people. Like I know I've had some trans friends who were like 18, so they were legally adults, right? But because of this, because of like banning gender-affirming care for people under 19, they couldn't continue their hormones until they were 19. Even though like I'm pretty sure like a federal judge like blocked it down at some point, but still I think just like a lot of companies and stuff were scared, so decided to comply with it. I also wanted to get into how it, like, the new administration has been erasing a lot of, like, trans people from just all sorts of government documents. The Park Service erased transgender on the Stonewall website, which is, like, crazy if you know anything about Stonewall. It removed any talk of Marsha P. Johnson or any other, like, trans activist who helped further queer rights in the mid 1900s. And yeah, it was very shocking. I also, because every time I look up trans experimental action, I get this result. And I just kind of want to talk about it. So this is on the actual White House thing, so you can look it up. But there's an article that says, yes, Biden spent millions on transgender animal experiments, and it's misinformation. It is very funny. He talks, he writes it like a fifth grader. He's like, the fake CNN news like tried to fact check me, but as always, I was right. But like, yeah, it's the wrong paper. Did it? Whatever. But oh, it's in here. Okay. Yeah. So it's very much sensationalized. They like gave hormones to like different animals in certain studies, but it was to identify like how those hormones would like affect their health and whatever. It was used to just like they didn't just do it for fun, you know. It was used to like potentially help, you know, thousands of Americans like with their health, but you know, they just reduced it to like, oh, isn't this crazy? They're making rats trans. And, like, there's a purpose for it, but they don't really care about that. And also they weren't making them trans. And then I wanted to mention this. This is the first time I saw like just like researching for this presentation. Like this is an APA article, and this is the first time I saw like that censorship of just like trans and all those like research documents and stuff, and it was like very jarring to me because I mean obviously I had seen like photos of it on Instagram and stuff, but just like actually coming across it in the wild was very like disheartening, you know. So obviously this is what it said LGBTQ activism, but now it's LGBTQ. So yeah, I just found that very sad. Now to the rhetoric behind transphobia. In a previous presentation in Women's Studies, I researched this article. And this excerpt from it I just really liked. So Zine Murray, an associate professor of political science and women's gender and sexuality studies at Fordham University, said there's been a decades-old effort to reinstate Christian nationalist principles as the law of the land. That increased its focus on transgender people after a 2015 U.S. Supreme Court ruling recognizing same-sex marriage nationwide. It took a few years, but some of the positions gained traction. So basically it's saying, like, with this massive success in gay rights that people have been fighting for decades, a lot of conservatives to kind of gain like political clout wanted to move to some other scapegoat. I mean, obviously they still don't like gay people, but like they focus a lot of their attacks more so on trans people, which you can see, especially 2020 and onwards. I also want to talk about some common myths that people point out. All of these were just like created to fearmonger about trans people. Hormones and surgeries are being pushed onto children. That's absolutely not true. Minors have never been allowed to have gender-affirming surgeries in Ohio, with the exception of top surgery for trans boys in like extreme distress. This is all information, or mostly information I got from my own experiences, like getting HRT and like doctors telling me all this stuff, you know. Before HB 68, HRT wasn't allowed to those under 16 in Ohio. Before that age, all trans children were allowed to take for puberty blockers, which are completely reversible. They have no like long-term side effects. They're completely safe. Even simple gender-affirming care is incredibly expensive and can take months to attain, even with proper resources. Our healthcare system is so, especially like the trans healthcare system, is so like not efficient. Like it's kind of insane that like conservatives are like, oh, they're pushing it onto kids. Like that's physically not possible with the way our current healthcare system is. I mean, we were pretty lucky, and it still took us like months to get an appointment. And And recurrent rates for gender affirming care, while not fully known, is generally thought to be incredibly low. Gender affirming surgeries have a recurrent rate of less than 1%, and in the study I read, about the 4 to 11% of detransitioners that detransition, the majority reported doing so because of societal pressures. They weren't doing it because, they were suddenly cured of being transgender. They were doing it because it's scary to be a trans person in today's society. Another myth, trans women are dominating in women's sports. I put 2 apostrophes there, but that's not true. Trans women often perform worse than cis women in sporting events because they have once they actually start HRT and they've been on it for a while, their body adapts to the estrogen. So they have pretty equivalent muscle, bone density, muscle strength, and even worse lung capacity and lower body strength, at least according to the study that I found. Trans women on estrogen going off that perform significantly worse than their cis male counterparts because they have a higher fat content and a weaker hand grip strength, these more feminine physical traits. The International Olympic Committee in 2022 or 2021 released a framework backed up by a lot of professionals, a lot of professional athletes and whatever, for transgender athletes competing in the preferred category, which requires them to be significantly physically transitioned. I forget exactly what the requirements are, but I'm pretty sure they have to be on estrogen or testosterone for a couple of years. They have to meet certain standards, basically. And less than 0.002% of U.S. college athletes are transgender, and less than 0.001% of recent Olympians have been trans. So by no means are they dominating women's sports. Even the ones that are in women's sports, they don't win all the time. There are plenty of cases of trans athletes competing, trans women athletes competing with women and losing by a fair amount. Just being trans doesn't give you this inherent biological difference. Some more myths that are just smaller. Trans women are invading women's spaces to prey on them. This affected me a lot when I was younger. I had some internalized transphobia about this, but no, they're not. Trans women are not dangerous to cis women in women's spaces and are themselves at incredibly high risk to receive gender-based harassment. If a man wants to predate upon a woman in her space, he won't pretend to be trans. He'll just commit the crime. I feel if there's a creepy man, he wouldn't go through the effort of presenting as trans to do that. They can just do that. Trans kids are more likely to develop mental illnesses because of their transitions. This is one I've seen a lot, and it's always confused me. Even from a completely right-wing perspective, it confuses me because the mental struggles of trans kids are they're very much caused by transphobia. They're caused by these outside factors. I didn't I don't understand how people can think that's caused by being more in tune with their body. The mental health of trans kids improve when they are allowed to be themselves and when they're allowed to transition socially or medically or whatever. And it's severely hurt when they are suppressed. There are many instances of this. Another thing going off of the HB 96 for the library ban, the justification is that trans and gay people are extremely sexual. A lot of transphobes and homophobes have this opinion. There's nothing inherently sexual about queer relationships, as opposed to straight relationships. They can be presented in a completely non-sexual way, same with trans people. The only reason for this is trans people and queer people in general have just for so long been considered this taboo, right? And so for society at large, they're considered this sinful other group, right? And so they attach all these labels to them. But yeah, anyways, this rhetoric is not based in any reality. It's just based on fear. It's just fear mongering from conservative pundits and politicians and whatever that have successfully infiltrated a lot of American people. I briefly want to go over the effects of transphobic attacks. So, of course, all these anti-trans laws and all this rampant transphobia has led to increased suicidality among transgender and non-binary youth. It's led to increased hate crimes, we're talked about more in a negative light, that increases hate crimes. And I mean, it's a huge issue. I don't personally know any trans people who have never had like suicidal thoughts. Like it's incredibly rampant. It's it's solely, not solely, but it's almost definitely due to like these anti-trans laws for the most part, and all this rhetoric that's being pushed around. Even in states and cities that are relatively safer for trans people, they are still hurt by this because it's happening on such a large scale. They can like never escape it. Like it's always like a part of their daily life, you know. I want to touch on cis women affected by transphobia. These are just 3 examples that you may know from recently. Elizabeth Victor and Ansley Baker, they're a lesbian couple, they're cisgender. They were kicked out of a Boston hotel after Ainsley, the one on the right, was told to prove her sex when like she was confronted in a bathroom. And from the article I read, like there's no like bathroom bills in Boston or like in Massachusetts, at least none that would apply in this situation. So this was just completely discriminatory and, you know, whatever. And like the hotel only apologized when this story became public. Otherwise, they did nothing to remedy it. Danny Davis is a cis woman from Florida. She was fired from her Walmart job after she was harassed by a transphobic customer who thought that she was trans. If I remember the story correctly, like she was like in the bathroom, and then this man came in and like started like yelling at her through the stalls, like you know, I'm gonna protect my wife and kids from you, whatever, all this stuff. And she reported it to HR, and then a couple weeks later she was let off, and she claims it was because of that. Amani Khalif is an Algerian cisgender Olympian. Again, this was very big news in like 2024. She was accused of being trans for her masculine features by prominent figures like J.K. Rowling and Donald Trump and I think Elon Musk probably, and a lot of other like TERFs and transphobes and whatever. And even like her competitors would like, you know, harass her and stuff. So like she and the Algerian government and like the Olympics like had to all come up and say like, no, this is misinformation, this isn't real. But this is like, this trend is just like the natural result of this like increased gender policing that we're seeing to supposedly protect cis women. It'll protect only feminine white cis women. It won't protect cis women of color. It won't protect masculine women like Ainsley, and it just won't protect women in general. Like cis women will be targeted. As for organizations that I think are incredibly helpful to the trans community, I want to point out the 3 that have helped me with this. So, aside from the Tea Party, has helped me a lot with researching and just like getting all this information and like helping with like, you know, some of this stuff. Like it's been really helpful. I really couldn't have done like all of this like in this short of a time without you. So thank you. And yeah, like her experience like protesting and organizing, whatever, has been like invaluable to me. Matter News, again, I'm assuming this is where a lot of you heard about this story. They're a local leftist newsroom in Columbus. Andy Downing interviewed me and wrote that article, and I'm just incredibly thankful that it blew up the way it did. I've seen like people I don't know talking about it. It's really interesting. And also, the ACLU reached out after that article was published, and I'll be talking to them in June. But they're, of course, the leading legal organizations for civil rights in the United States. They fight against most legislative attacks on trans people. When HB 68 was temporarily blocked by the District Court of Appeals, they were, I forget the term, but they were like fighting for, you know, trans people. They help. Not only did they help like these bills, but they also help like individuals and communities get justice, which is why they reached out to me. And also, I saw this, I read it, and I thought it was funny. I'm a DJHS grad, and this is nothing new for the school. When I was there mid to late 2000s, the ACLU had to get involved because the principal at the time tried to stop somebody from wearing a shirt that said "I support gay marriage," which is insane to think about now, because I mean, even they were telling me like, yeah, you can wear stuff like that, but just like in support of a group, right? But they've always been doing this. They've always been prioritizing monetary benefits and their own image over actually protecting their marginalized students. Advocacy groups, again, that would include the Trans Experimental Action. But these are groups that like help with protests. They just help speak out against like any queer injustices. So the Black Queer and Intersectional Collective focuses on Black queer people in Columbus. They organize a lot of stuff. They organize this community pride event, which I'll get to. They have a lot of like, they post a lot of like donations and help links or whatever to their Instagram page, just for like any Black queer people in need, just like helping the community. Trans Ohio is one of the largest like just trans groups in Ohio. They're consistently fighting like with the ACLU, like alongside the ACLU, against like these like transphobic attacks. I know for HB 96 they were at least supposed to share like the responses of like all the trans people they could, like about like why the bill was bad, why it shouldn't be passed, but I believe they weren't allowed to show that, which is shitty, but they're still an incredibly good organization. The Buckeye Flame is another local news network, this time focused specifically on queer issues. They're just a very good source for any updates in Ohio legislation, whatever. I get a lot of information from them. Kaleidoscope Youth Center, I also reached out to help like put up my flyers and stuff for this event. I haven't been to them, but from what I've heard, they're a very good youth center. They're the biggest one in Ohio. They just create this space for trans and queer kids all throughout Central Ohio. Mosaic is kind of similar except for adults, and it focuses on particularly like trans adults of color. It just focuses on like they have like this meeting space, and they hang out. Like these community groups are mostly just like to promote community, to promote friendship among the community. The community pride, this is again by Black Queer Intersectional Committee, but this is like an alternative to the Stonewall Pride that takes place every year during Pride Month. This one, I believe, is taking place during October this year, the whole point of it is like they don't take donations from big companies. There aren't like cops patrolling it. It's just like the queer community like getting together and like kind of going back to the roots of these like pride protests and these pride celebrations. And queer climbing Columbus, I don't rock climb, but a surprising amount of trans people rock climb. I don't know. There's a group for that. For gender affirming care, Equitas Health is one of the biggest, like specifically queer health organizations here in Ohio. They help a lot of like the Midwest, like Kentucky too. I don't use them, but I've heard good things about them. Central Ohio Trans Collective, SCI, is a prominent member in that. They're more of a grassroots organization that just like help trans people and queer people just like get their HRT when it can be especially tough during these times. They have like shop parties. They're just like this community-oriented thing for people to get their HRT. Mental health and crisis lines. There are two main types. Warm lines do not call cops, and hotlines may call cops like if you're saying you're in danger or someone else is in danger. And which, like for a lot of most scenarios, like cops do not help mental health crises at all. So a lot of queer people have started switching to like these warm lines where they can just like connect with other trans people. They can get the help that they need without risk of being like assaulted by police officers. The one I want to point out is the Wildfire Alliance. It has peer-to-peer support, which basically just means like the people you're connecting with, they're trained counselors, but they've also gone through similar struggles to you, like they're curated to you. They've gone through, in this case, like the transphobia that you've been through, but they also focus on all different types of struggles. They focus on racism, they focus on fatphobia, whatever. They also have a lot of like alternative healing things, like they have yoga classes and art classes and whatever. I think they're based like in the east, kind of. Yeah, so they're not based here, but their lines are available here, and they're like online classes. And they're also not open 24/7, so keep that in mind. The Trevor Project is the most popular queer hotline. It's made up of all trained LGBTQ+ counselors. It focuses specifically on queer struggles, whereas the Wildfire Alliance focuses on many different ones, and it is open 24/7, so it's a bit more reliable in that sense. The last thing I want to talk about was just like how, as high school students, like people can make an impact. My own tips on protesting, just from trial and error with this event. Try to work with your school. Even if I did work with them, it would have been cool. But since I didn't, the ACLU reached out, and then all of you are here. So it's kind of a win either way. But try to work with them. Try to organize something with them. I know, if I remember correctly, like Jerome's done a lot of, not protests, but like a lot of awareness events like this. So if you pitch us that, they may be willing to help, or maybe not. I don't know. Great symbol, eye-catching flyers. These are the two I made. They have just like they have very simple designs. They have like the title very much in bold. They have the date and the location. They have basically just like a very brief like overview of what they are, what you can do there, stuff like that. Just like it's good for advertising. It's good for people to share on their stories, whatever. Reach out to local organizations and for support in advertising. Again, the help that Sharon's Experimental Action and Matter News has done for me with this project is immense. I really couldn't have done this without them. Talk about the events to individual students. I found that like when I just like share it online, like some students will come, but in order to really like get someone to come, you need to like talk to them. You need to like share with them why it's important, because like most people don't like read these Instagram posts super closely, or they might forget about it, whatever. But if you make that personal connection, there's a much greater chance they'll actually like show up and participate in it. Going along with that, like handing out physical reminders. These are the wristbands I drove door to door delivering, and like sneakily handing them out in school too. But it's something. But yeah, just like giving people these physical reminders again. It'll remind them of the event. It'll give them like a personal connection. It'll give them a reason to come to it. Form a group to help you. I kind of do this, but if you're a student and you're looking to maybe make a group or a club that like focuses on protesting and for like queer rights or whatever you want it to be about, getting just like people to help you, like not just doing it all on your own, is incredibly helpful. Just like having those people there to support, to bounce ideas off of. Like if I didn't have those people, like this presentation would have been kind of bad. So it's very important. Lastly, adapt. I obviously had to adapt a lot from what it was initially intended. This was going to be at Jerome, and then it wasn't. And I was gonna post flyers up in school, and then I couldn't. So just like adapting, trying to overcome those struggles, trying to get word out, even if there are like some obstacles, is really important. For attending protests, these notes are specifically inspired by what I've seen from like a lot of pro-Palestinian protests, and those have been very heavily like censored and surveilled and whatever for basically the past couple of years, probably more than that. And it's less important at like other protests because they're less surveilled, but it's still important, especially if you're like protesting something that might be controversial to the government, whatever. Wear a mask and inconspicuous clothing so that they can't track you if you get in trouble. Turn off or don't bring your phone because they can very easily track that with the information in it. Don't post about yourself attending the event. Like I normally, but like I'll post about the event, but then I won't like post a selfie of me being there. Like just for safety. Yeah.
So what are you supposed to do if you are hopeless with directions and will get lost without using your phone?
Well, you can take it. Like it's if like this is just like if you want to be extra safe. But
You can turn off your locations.
Yeah.
So 2 things about phones. One, a police officer can make you open your phone with Face ID, so turn off your Face ID because they can't force you to put your password in. And secondly, if you turn off your location, you know how a lot of times it shows your location where you are? So you can have your phone just not be a smartphone.
Yeah.
So if you do that, you can still have your phone with you because a lot of people, the phone is like their lifeline. And it's easier to just do those 2 things than to worry about not bringing your phone.
Yeah. Yeah, to be clear, phones are important for communication, but that's another reason for this next one, which is like going with a friend or a group, just like, you know, safety numbers, like having those people around you to help you to talk about your experiences with, whatever. It's very helpful. And lastly, be cautious, but don't let them scare you. It's a very scary time right now, and there's a lot of like pushback from the government on all these issues, and it's really important to remember that like you're fighting for a good cause, and anytime people have fought for anything, there's been like immense struggle, and there's been immense pushback from those in power, and you just have to kind of fight against that. Follow these groups. These ones are the ones I see posting events most often. This is the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They also host a ton of protests. Like every protest I've been to or seen, they've been involved in some way. So following them, either the national one or the specifically Columbus one, is very useful if we want to get into like protests around here. So I wanted to bring up Sai because Sai works, as I mentioned, at the Central Ohio Trans Collective and also at Trans Experimental Action. And she has a lot more experience in this stuff than I do, so I thought it would be really useful to have her talk for a bit. So if you want to.
Yeah. First, can we have a round of applause for how thank you guys all for coming as well. This was like such a beautiful turnout. Yeah, so I organize with these 2 organizations. I'm also a street medic with First Aid Central Ohio. And so I primarily come with this from a safety perspective. And so I'll talk to you guys a little bit about that. First, as we've mentioned, masking is really useful, especially with queer events. They're often targeted by right-wing groups. I'm sure all of you guys have seen in Ohio, we've had literal Nazis come to drag events. They will go and they will try and dox people. So having a mask covering up is really useful. Like if you have tattoos, I have this beautiful one with the trans symbol in it. I don't want that seen at events like this, despite how proud I am of it, just for safety. It's also, coronavirus is still going around, and especially for fall and spring, we have allergies, we have sicknesses, so it's useful for both ways. To also touch on the phone thing, again, leaving your phone at home might not be accessible for everyone. I really appreciate you bringing up having Face ID and other things off. My one warning also is even if you have your location services off, your phone can still be tracked by police. They have what are called stingrays set up, which will, through Wi-Fi or other such things, send a little information to your phone and then send it back to them. Not ideal, but in this current digital day and age, it's really hard to avoid bringing your phone, so just knowing the risks. Having people at home or someone you trust that knows you're going to protests is essential. With the groups that I'm working at, we have someone dedicated to that, but I'll text when I arrive at a protest, when I leave a protest, and then when I get home safe. And I highly recommend having someone, especially someone who has the emergency information, to do that. It can be like your best friend. That's what it was for me for a while. And especially coming as a street medic, we're getting into the summer months. Dress for the weather. I'm wearing this cheer-thin thing because, oh God, is it so hot today. So do that. If you're like me and you will burn easily, have sunscreen, have water. Make sure you are taking care of yourself. The way that we can extend and make sure our voices are heard are by making sure that we are safe at events like this and we are keeping other people around us safe. As you mentioned, we've had a lot of police and other state actors cracking down on protests. This does happen with queer events. I'd like to highlight one that I thought was completely safe. This is not the usual, but this is just to highlight what can happen. I was in a suburb of Columbus. I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting which one. And we were outside of State Hall, or outside of the City Hall, because they wouldn't let a pride flag be put up, and they just had a hearing. And so we were protesting outside of this. This is when I was 16 in 2020, and they sent in riot cops for that. We have a bunch of queer teenagers with pride flags, and they sent in riot cops. Thankfully, nothing happened, but this is something to still be aware of. And something to come to a protest in mind is, how do you feel safe? When do you know that you want to leave? For a lot of people, when we had more police coming, they knew that they didn't feel safe in wanting to leave. So before you're going to events like this, coming up with those boundaries in your mind. Yeah?
In a recent march that I went to a few months ago for the bathroom ban,
Yeah.
there was a particularly perturbed and deranged driver who nearly hit a lot of people at that parade,
Yeah.
and I think injured one. It's really important to keep in mind that though you're a group together in a parade, it's also really important to realize that there is zero risk. You need to rely on people around you to help you in those situations.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, especially as we see more and more crackdowns on queer things, on marginalized groups, and those people speaking out for people speaking out for those groups, we're gonna have more stuff like that. As you talked about, there's a cultural war against trans people right now because it furthers agendas, and so we'll get people like that coming. So making sure that you're staying safe. But this is by all means not to scare you. Most of these protests are completely safe. I've organized a bunch of them. They all usually go without a hitch. As a street medic, the thing they usually have to deal with is people not drinking enough water. But also, knowing your rights before you go to these protests. The ACLU and National Lawyers Guild often will host events, especially the local National Lawyers Guild, will talk about what are your rights at a protest? What are your rights in police coming knocking to your door? I recommend taking those. I recommend looking up to those, knowing those. So if a police officer or someone else tries to come and give you completely false statements, you'll know what to say, you'll know what to do. I highly recommend getting into organizing if this is something that interests you. Reaching out, as you talked about, to more experienced organizers is wonderful. Especially when I started organizing, I didn't know what to do. I learned through failing so many times, and one of the things I realized is I should have done that earlier. So identifying groups that you like what they're doing and reaching out to them is really useful. But also knowing that you can organize in different spaces. Like right now, I organize completely downtown, a lot with campuses and stuff like that, because that's what I'm used to. You organizing high school campuses high schools are amazing. Like just finding, if you are at a workplace and you realize there's anti-trans or anti-queer rhetoric, maybe you guys have a union you can get involved. So thinking about this, where do you see attacks on trans and other marginalized people, and how can you organize there? Usually there's some group already starting it or have done it before and then got burnt out, so trying to reach out to those people. But again, one of my biggest safety tips, as you talked about, for all of this, is having other people and having a community around you. If you try and do this alone, you will go crazy and get exhausted. Ask me how I know. If you go to events alone, they can be scary, overwhelming, and tiresome. So going with a group of people, having a community around you, not only can make the work that you're doing so much easier, but it can make you feel so much better. before I got into organizing, I was like kind of just sitting in my room, doom scrolling, doing nothing, and just panicking about the state of the world. It's gotten so much better since I've started organizing, since I've gotten involved in communities and created community around me. I cannot recommend it enough. Yeah.
I would just like to say like that this stuff works. Too.
Yes.
Like there is purpose in it. One thing that comes to mind immediately, it was the University of Cincinnati, right? Who, the bathroom thing. They complied in advance with the bathroom ban by putting up these signs outside their bathrooms that said biological men and biological women. Huge backlash to that. Student demonstrations, all these protests, and it worked. Like they backed down from it. They took them back down, and you know, that's what protesting does.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's really important to bring up. These things work. That's the reason we get so much retaliation against this stuff, is because we know it works. We've seen historically that it works, and it is working currently. So having that in mind, knowing past struggles and building from past struggles is essential. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you.
So, to end this off, like until 5:30, we have like 25 minutes. I just want to go through and like, if anyone has any questions, if any trans people want to talk about their experiences, I want this to be kind of like a forum for that. Yes, you bet.
Can I say
Sorry, I
first?
raised my hand earlier.
I'm sorry.
About this the entire time. So hi, my name is
Can I-
Sorry, don't tell me. I'm so sorry.
No, I apologize. I just really want to note that there are reporters in this room, and so while you're asking questions, I would just make sure that you're a little bit careful with what you're asking, what the content of your question is. Just like, don't incriminate yourself is basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay, that's good advice.
So I am the president at Jerome's GSA Gender Sexuality Alliance. But we haven't been active this year just because of like where teachers been out on like maternity leave. But this year, before she was out, we had significantly like less attendance because the trust sort of was a lot broken because a trans Matt Walsh supporter came in,
Oh.
which I did not expect.
Yeah.
It was crazy. They had neopronouns, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But how would you like recommend that I rebuild trust for the like in advance, like, for the future?
That's true. There were a trans Matt Walsh.
Yeah, they were like, I thought they were joking, and I was like, oh my god, that's so crazy, right?
Okay, well, I don't know how to answer that.
You want me to start on that
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think something you could start with is having a community discussion or like making a post about like, hey, we haven't been active. I'm sure you guys have heard stuff happening and taking accountability for like what happened, even though it's not your guys' fault that this happened, but still having this community accountability and open dialogue can be really useful. And then try and identify, okay, so did they cause harm? What are some ways that we can mitigate the harm going forward? Talking to anyone who might have been harmed about it, and basically saying that this happened in the past, I'm so sorry, this was something really unfortunate. We have learned this is what we're going to be doing moving forward to rebuild the trust, and then just holding fun little events to start out. Yeah.
I think
Of course.
also from my own experiences in GSA, I think because I was in it for the first 2 years and I kind of fell off, but I think just again having those like fun events, and also, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but like having events like this, I think like teach-ins, like lectures, whatever, about like these issues aren't like talked about as much, I think might entice a lot of queer people who otherwise might not be interested in like, you know, arts and crafts or whatever. So I think just like doing more like, I guess protesty stuff. Like that's my purpose. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I know we mentioned the police surveillance and the stingrays and that sort of thing. I'm no expert on it personally, but I just wanted to say that I do know, definitely for iPhones and for most Androids, they have an option called lockdown mode, which can shut off, because the way that some of these stingray devices work, I don't know how CPD's situation is, but they'll downgrade your phone signal back to the 3G and 2G networks. So if you use lockdown mode on your phone, which I would just give a quick Google, it's on most phones, that can be a way to give you a bit more peace of mind, say if you don't want to go completely without a phone when going to a protest, which is like one, and that's just one more step besides, you know, obviously taking off your Face ID and your location.
And I want to add to that too. You can also just on Amazon buy a Faraday bag. They have ones that are small enough to put your phone in, and they work wonderfully. I mean, my husband sat right next to me on the couch, and I could not. I mean, there was no signal going to my phone on the Faraday bag. So put it in there when you get to the protest or before you're at the protest. You've got your phone with you, but if you need it for an emergency, it's there. Take it out when you're done.
I have a question.
Yes.
As a black man, I've been ridiculed sometimes, but I cannot hide my color. In the gay community, there is a certain, from YNC, that people, when you go to those things, can they be down so they'll be less targeted?
That's for a lot of like gay people and lesbian like people like cisgender queer people. That's true to a certain extent. But it's really just like it would be hiding like a fundamental part of yourself is how I view it. Like, you know, if I hadn't transitioned, yeah, and I could still present like decently masculine, I would absolutely hate that. Like, I feel uncomfortable in my body, you know. If like a gay couple, I mean, they can act more like straight, right? But they wouldn't be able to do like, you know, things that couples do in public. They wouldn't be able to go out on dates. They wouldn't like be able to hold hands, do anything even that might seem gay to the public. So like, yes, there is like a way to hide it, but it's kind of like just denying this like essential part of yourself, at least from my experience.
And that's what they want you to do too.
Mm.
Well, the thing is, for me, I'm married to a white woman. It's hard to hold her hand around me.
Yeah.
We were in Europe, it was easy. We just do anything we want. But in Europe, in the US, there is a certain stigma about a black man or white woman. Well, black for you too, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar thing. I mean, you know, you have to be careful as like an interracial couple and also as like a gay couple or a lesbian couple or whatever, or as a couple where one of you is visibly trans. But that's another thing, like as a transition person, I can't really hide a lot of features I've gained from HRT. So it's kind of just visible a lot of the time, unless I transition to a point where like most like strangers on the street can't tell that I'm trans. Like it's something I always have to worry about, I guess. So I hope that answers your question. Yes.
If you still experience dysphoria, but you have in the past, how have you kind of, how have you worked to get over that or get past it?
Yeah. I still get dysphoria all the time. I think it's, you know, I've made strides in my transition, but it's still a very constant thing. I don't know if it'll ever go away completely. I mean, it's a mental thing, right? What helps me the most is having this community of trans people around me, and like having these people who like, you know, think I'm beautiful like the way I am, and I think they're beautiful the way they are, and like just like I think at Jerome I feel it a lot because there's maybe like one other out trans girl at Jerome that I know of. So it's a very isolating place, and I don't really see people like me. But over the past year, I've started meeting like a lot more trans femme friends, just more trans friends in general, more queer friends, and it just feels like a lot more natural, I guess. So it doesn't get rid. I'm not sure if you can really get rid of your dysphoria, unfortunately, but there's definitely ways to remedy it through community. Yes.
For people who aren't transgender, what are the best things they can do to loudly support trans people and to make a difference?
Attend protests, for sure. Speak out about it.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
As like a cisgender person, what can you do to support trans people in like the loudest way possible? Yeah, attend protests, like post about it online, send letters to your representatives, donate if you're able to. Just like anything that would help like a trans organization or your trans friends around you, like just do that and do that very proudly and like loudly, because I think that would make the most difference. Yes.
Hi, my name's Cassie, and on that kind of subject, I think the big thing is just being present in your life and using your own skills to help people. It doesn't always look like protests, it can, but like Sai said, community organizing is no joke. It can really burn you out, and it can be a little traumatizing. So I just wanted to say, I started Matter News like 7 years ago with a couple other young gay women, and at the time I was very involved in community organizing in Columbus, and there just wasn't any news outlets that were covering our protests, let alone if they did, they wouldn't cover the real reasons behind our protests. And no offense to the outlets in the room, but they kind of are late to the party, or they just, are just doing it for clicks. So I started a news outlet because I was like, this is a big missing piece to us being able to effectively advocate for these things. So there's other ways, things you can build that can support communities like the trans community.
Yes.
Hi, I think also to add to that, first of all, thank you so much. This has been so informative. I think to add to that too, like if you're a parent or like an adult with a trans kid, or have a kid who's non-binary, like just really listening to them describe their experience to you, and like whatever discomfort you may have around like this change that you're witnessing, to sort of deal with that privately or with like other parents, or research online, like just Google, my kid might be trans, or my kid is trans, or I think my kid's non-binary, and just like find a compassionate resource that can help you. There's so many books about it, like really like know that it's okay to like not know all the answers right away, but then to also like be like, okay, I have a responsibility to these young people in my life, like what should I do now? Because if they think that coming out to you as trans or non-binary is like making you mad or making you upset, they'll feel that. And so like really sort of I would say just like dealing with that on your own, and then like trying to show up, knowing you might make mistakes once in a while, but like they'll feel it if you really care. So that's another thing I would say too, just in terms of offering that support in your families and local circles.
Yes.
I think it also really matters how you act when, like, no trans people are in the room. Like, just consistently sticking up for the trans people in your life. Correcting misgendering or denaming when it's safe to do so. If that person is out to other people, it's really simple. Just say, hey, it's she, it's he, it's they. That takes the burden off of that person to be always advocating only for themselves. And also like about some of the misinformation we talked about today. When someone says like, I just don't think it's fair that they're dominating women's sports, you can say like, hey, I don't think that's true, and kind of push back on that a little. And stuff like that helps so much, because a lot of people aren't like malicious, they're just misinformed about stuff.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you all. I think everybody in this room is an ally. I think when you look at the statistics up there, the 1%, the 0.001% of the community is trans, we all need to be allies. It's the 99% that will change the needle. When you think about women's rights, when you think about civil rights, it's not just women that advocated to get voting rights, it's not just African Americans or blacks or a certain population when gay marriage became legalized. All those things took more than just that particular community. So it's really important, as everybody today has said, we're all here because we care, because we want to change the narrative, but we need to also be talking to people just like he said. I'm sorry. Just like they said, we need to be the allies in the room, and that's what it's going to take. That's what it took to get gay marriage passed. It took pushbacks, protests, all of us being there and supporting people, because this is not about, look at all the problems we're dealing with in society. It's not about people who are transgender, it's about taking away from the problems we have in society, whether it's property taxes, income tax, things that we deal with at the State House by saying, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to these transgender people who are ruining your lives. That's not what's ruining your lives. And again, we need to start getting back to paying attention to politics, because what I've seen in my 2 terms is that because of gerrymandered districts, oftentimes politicians are not there to help their constituents. They're there because they have their own agenda that is being supported by big money, by drug money. So we really do need to speak out. We need to pay attention. We need to push back, as they all said. Calling not only your representatives, because in Franklin County we are all allies, but calling the Speaker of the House, calling some of the Republicans on the other side. When it came to a lot of these transgender bills that passed, we would get 6 phone calls or emails saying, please vote no on this, versus 1 or 2 over the whole time. It was such a big difference in terms of people who do not want these bills to pass versus what happened at the State House. So again, I just want to thank everyone, but I do want to say it takes the voice of many to hear the voice of few.
Who are you?
State Representative Anita Samani.
You have a card?
I don't. I represented District 11, which was this district, but again, because of gerrymandering and district lines changing, I now represent District 8, which is a little bit of Dublin, Worthington, and I also practice as a OBGYN here, and I've been in Columbus for 30 plus years. First generation immigrant, what else can I say?
With you.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Thanks.
Of course, I just in case something that I just thought of, just to let everyone know, on Sunday of Memorial Day, it's graduation, it's gonna be a little busy, but at the Dublin Rec Center, they have a rainbow run 5K, and it's gonna actually benefit the Kaleidoscope Youth Center. So just FYI, I figured there's probably some people who are in town and like that.
Like you.
Yes.
I just wanted to say something for all the trans folks that are probably in this room, more than likely. There's been a lot of talk about protests and coming together and whatnot. But I think it's most important to consider that the best protest you could possibly provide is being yourself. That just normalizing and just being yourself and being happy with who you are, and showing that to other people and showing that that's okay. That is probably the best protest you could possibly give, no matter what. Whether you go to an event or not.
Yes.
I also just want to echo echo what a lot of people have said. I'm so impressed with you and all the education you gave me today and all of us, so thank you. I'm a parent of a couple of kids at Jerome, and I'm really disheartened that you weren't allowed to give this at Jerome. What tips do you have for me? How can I rally my community of people to protest back against Jerome? Do you have any suggestions or tips for us?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, you aren't the parents of any trans kids, right?
I'm not.
Okay.
And my kids would have been here also to support you, but they couldn't be here. But
Do you have anything to ask?
Call your school board members.
School board
Call your
members.
school board members, call your principal, and get all of your other cisgender parents,
Yes.
friends, to do the same thing.
Yes.
Because it's easy to ignore people like us sometimes,
Yep.
but combined, like Representative Samani said,
Yeah.
we're a lot harder to ignore.
Go to school board meetings if they have open meetings.
Yeah.
Make your voice heard there.
There, at the school board meetings, there's 2 meetings every month. One of them is kind of like open, and you can go and speak and ask questions about anything. And so I would go to the board meetings. I've been going every month, every meeting, and you can just go and voice, because they just passed the Parents' Bill of Rights, or they're writing it in, and it's really disheartening because it kind of puts, gender identity as kind of like a mental problem, and it's not. So you need to go and speak at the board meetings to let them know that we're here and we're watching.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have like a note for the cis people in the room, I guess. So like in the past week, I had like people harassing me just from their cars 3 times in my neighborhood. 2 times people threw stuff at me. And ultimately it was actually the help that I received from my cis friends, in addition to my trans community, that like made me feel safe in those moments. And so being someone that if you know any trans person, just like making it very clear that you can call me if something bad happens to you is extremely important. Because I had to lean on those folks in that moment, in those moments. I think it's important to like recognize how bad things are right now. And a lot of my friends are homeless trans youth, and really being able to give resources, being able to be like, you can stay in my home if you need to, is an important thing to communicate. Because if you are not extremely clear about that, people might not go to you, and in that case, they will end up on the streets. And so there are serious issues that need to be addressed in the city, and a lot of it has to happen through politics. But in the time where our political systems are failing, and they are failing right now, it has to happen through community, through friendship, and through clear communication that I am an ally, and I'm not saying that just performatively, I'm saying that I will resource you. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Yes.
To build off that, again, offering up, saying what resources you have to people. Don't just say vaguely, I'm here to help you. Give them specific ways that you can help them. And especially with that, do I have a couch open, an extra room that is available for people? Especially for the parents out here, I'm sure if your kid knows other trans people and their parents aren't treating them well, can you invite that kid to have more sleepovers? Stuff like that, to get away from those parents. I also used to organize in middle and high school for trans people, and one of the things that we did is a lot of my friends were at real risk of getting thrown out of their houses. And so we had plans for that. In middle school, I had to make plans for my friends getting kicked out of their houses. That's crazy. So offering up those resources is so essential, as you talked about. I cannot speak on that enough. Even if it's a friend of a friend of a friend, offering out that lending hand can make the difference between someone's life and death. I've seen it with people around me. So having that help, I cannot speak on enough, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
I wanted to add on to that, because shortly after I came out to my parents, who are both conservative, it's really awesome. Sorry. I was worried about my housing situation. Times between then and now, I was worried about it because they things sounded like they were deciding they would split property between that. I would say, because a lot of times it's like, oh, if you're not out, like, don't come out to your parents if you're not, like, safe. But if you already are, because a lot of times, you know, you're young and you cannot imagine living like as a cis person. You should have like a list of people you can go to. I used to have like a bag ready for if I needed something I could. So I think don't talk if you're already out to your parents and they're conservative or they're just not supportive. Do not talk to them about it. Like, absolutely just leave it alone. I know it like sucks, it really does. But they're not good, like, at least in my experience, not gonna listen. It's gonna take either time or just a lot of external resources convincing them, hearing from like professionals. But whatever it is, you as a child cannot change their mind. So it's really just gonna be like, at least in my experience and experiences I have witnessed from other people, it's going to make things worse because they're going to be like, this is an extreme problem, I need to stop this. There was a time where they were considering conversion therapy for me. Thankfully, it's not legal in Central Ohio. And but yeah, so it can a lot of times just make things worse. So I would say if you come out, if you're already out to them, just and they're not supportive, it's not a good idea to discuss them.
I think we have time for like one more question. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to say this really quickly. I found this app really recently. It's called 5 Calls, like the number 5 Calls. Download it on the App Store right now. It connects you to your representatives really quickly, and they even have scripts for you, like in the app too, on these important issues. Take 5 minutes to call to those national and your local representatives.
So the 5 means 5 minutes. I thought the 5 meant like you only get 5 calls and then the app deletes itself.
There's no. It's
I need that one.
I was gonna say 5
calls, but it's super helpful if you don't know what to say. You're like, I would call, but I don't know how. That makes it so easy.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming. If you haven't grabbed the info sheets I have, that has a lot of important information on it. A lot of the organizations I talked about, some of the rhetoric I talked about, stuff like that. So please grab one on the way out if you don't already have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for